Newsday continues here on One News Now. I'm Charles Lejano. Presidential aspirant Isko Moreno has arrived in Cabuyao, Laguna. The Manila mayor was warmly received by his supporters in the first stop of his Laguna visit. He is expected to talk to barangay workers and the youth sector in the area before going to Calamba for the grand launch of Bilis Kilos, Laguna. The Mactan-Fernan Bridge in Cebu turned pink as supporters of Vice President Leni Robredo lined up to greet her. Robredo is in the province to turn over livelihood subsidies in Cebu today as part of the project of the OVP. She is currently with Archbishop Jose Palma for a courtesy visit. An official from Hugpong ng Pagbabago denies that Sara Duterte's sudden exit from the party is part of a bigger strategy. HNP Secretary General Anthony Del Rosario said the presidential daughter genuinely did not want to run for a national post. He says there must then be a really good reason for her, quote, sudden change of mind.
Ilang beses na kami nag-usap niya ni Mayor, sabi ni Mayor sa akin, tumigil na kayo, tama na. I'm done. I'm already comfortable. I've already decided. I'm seeking my third term. So that's why when she withdrew her COC, she didn't also tell us. Siyempre, nagulat kami, but we know that she knows what she's doing. So we just have to trust that she knows what she's doing, di ba? Kasi siya nakakaalam yan eh.
Meanwhile, a political analyst believes Sara Duterte would likely regain her survey numbers from Bongbong Marcos if she officially declares her presidential bid. Professor Julio Tihanki said the incumbent Davao City mayor will be a force to reckon with if she decides to run for the top post because of her popularity.
Of course, yung constituency, itong popularity ni Mayor Sara is also a residual of the popularity of President Duterte, no? So it's a reflected popularity. No? Unlike other post-EDSA presidents na after midterms bumababa na yung kanilang popularity, itong Pangulong to kahit papano medyo mataas pa rin. Kahit unti-unti nang bumababa dahil nga after midterms na and palanding na, tapos meron pang investigasyon ng parmali. Pero hindi ganun katindi.
Filipinos took part in the United Nations Climate Summit in Glasgow. Some were allowed to share their experiences on stage, while others made their thoughts known through protesting. Gretchen Ho with the story.
In this simple but moving artwork, digital artist Brix Dumas portrayed the Philippines as one of the major plastic polluters in the world. Brix's piece, entitled NEXUS, made it to the Digital Art for Climate competition in the COP26 summit.
Ginamit kong colors ay Philippine colors. Ginamit ko yung blue kasi para mas ma-elaborate yung nangyayari sa water. Yung nasusunog na smoke ay leaves kasi para makita rin din yung forest fires. Tapos kung mapansin nyo rin yung sa may plastic ay fishtail. So, sige.
The 30-year-old visual artist is the only Pinoy who made it to the finals. Dumas, a former contemporary Filipino professor, said his piece was inspired by one of his trips to Mindanao.
May nakita ko doon na parang vending machine ng water. Sa side niya ay may plastic tapos may straw. Single-use plastic, kumbaga, yung nangyayari. Kasi after mong gamitin, tapon agad.
All the pieces will be auctioned off as digital assets or NFTs. Proceeds will go to climate change organizations under the United Nations. And just like Brix, Marinel Ubaldo, a 24-year-old climate activist and Typhoon Yolanda survivor, also brought the reality of her story to the Glasgow summit.
A lot of people pa, kagaya po kami, sa komunidad namin, andun pa rin kami nakatira sa shoreline. At kung wala kang resources to relocate yourself, dun ka lang, gusto ko na parang i-honor ng world leaders ang kanilang promise, decade-old promise na actually nagmagbigay ng $100 billion for climate fund.
Marinel also said that reliving her story has been traumatic.
Kahit traumatic yung karanasan na yon, binabalik-balikan namin kasi gusto namin na magkaroon ng better na mga solutions.
Some Filipinos also had a chance to attend events and talks during the summit. While most of them didn't have the chance to speak, they voiced out their concerns through protesting.
Nasa na yung pera para bayaran yung itong mga naging apekto at paano tayo tutulungan yung mga developing countries mag-adapt.
Even during the pandemic, the country's representatives in Glasgow are striving hard for the Filipino voice to be heard. Gretchen Ho, We Are One News.
The Metro Manila Development Authority has formally launched solar-powered streetlights along EDSA. MMDA Chairman Benher Abalos says these streetlights will cover at least 70% of the around 23-kilometer thoroughfare. Even though the agency has yet to install all 2,000 or 100% of the solar-powered lights, Abalos says they opened them as early as now, as the volume of vehicles on EDSA continues to increase. He also notes that they chose solar-powered lights to avoid finger-pointing among government agencies on who will pay for power consumption.
Ang tanong, bakit solar? Kasi kung minsan kung sino magbabayad na kuryente. No? Is it DPWH? Is it the LGU? Is it MMDA? So ginawa na lang namin solar to, mas mabilis i-maintain. At the same time, wala nang problema tungkol kung sino magbabayad. Kaya kita mo mas maliwanag ngayon. Tamang-tama ang Christmas na ito. Mas maliwanag.
The Tourism Department is eyeing to further decrease the number of quarantine days for tourists from yellow list countries. Secretary Berna Romulo Puyat says this can be done by ramping up the pace of vaccinations. Let's hear more from Bloomberg Markets Asia.
I'm sure a lot of tourists are waiting on when they can actually then come back and visit the country. Do you have a working timetable of when you will reopen the border to foreign tourists?
We're hoping as more and more people are vaccinated, first we have to reduce the quarantine days. And second, we're hoping that, the Department of Tourism since last May has already been pushing for green lanes, especially for reduced quarantine days or if possible, no quarantine days for fully vaccinated. Of course, we already have no quarantine days for those countries coming from low-risk countries. We call it from the green countries. That's based on the CDC. So we're hoping to reduce the quarantine days, but we're always pushing for to reopen. But, you know, the Philippines is quite unique because we not only have foreign tourists, but we also have OFWs coming home. So hopefully with less quarantine days, we'll be able to, I've been pushing for foreign tourists, at least from green lanes, from green countries to be able to enter the country.
And do you have, I know this is a moving target and there are many moving parts. When will you hope to see that happen in terms of just having a rough timetable?
It's hard to say, but hopefully soon.
Okay.
Because right now, at least the vaccination, we expect by the end of the year we've vaccinated at least 50% of our eligible population. Our population is about 108 million. So we hope to be able to vaccinate by end of the year 50% of the eligible population, which also includes ages 12 to 17, because we've already been starting vaccinating kids below 18 years old.
Right, and I'm wondering, and I'm just going to bring up an example, say of Hong Kong, for example, or other places like Singapore, where the opening of the border was somewhat also contingent on the vaccination rates in the country. Is there a similar relationship?
Yes, it's very
that
similar.
you're looking at?
Yes. As it is in other countries, though we keep pushing for the reopening of the economy, reopening of tourism, it has to be balanced with health and safety. So I'm sure without compromising the health and safety of the citizens. And we have a team of health experts, and they always look at the vaccination rates. But of course, it's very positive that the NCR, the National Capital Region, we've already fully vaccinated 88% of our population. First dose, it's already 97%. So that's a big boost in reducing the quarantine days and possibly no quarantine, even from countries coming from the yellow list.
President Duterte called on other world leaders for greater collaboration in addressing challenges related to the pandemic and climate change. At the 2021 APEC Business Advisory Council Dialogue, with economic leaders held virtually yesterday, Duterte raised key points of collaboration between members of the council. The president also reiterated his call for developed countries to help developing economies mitigate the effects of climate change and COVID-19 pandemic.
Let me identify key areas where we can collaborate more for an inclusive and sustainable future. First, improving digitalization and literacy in rural communities. Second, establishing a national social protection floor, or SPF. The COVID-19 pandemic has exposed the limitation of social protection programs in APEC communities. Third, facilitating the transition of developing economies to a low-carbon economy in face of the climate change.
Here's a quick look at some of today's headlines. Presidential daughter Sara Duterte officially joins LAKAS-CMD, allowing her to run for a national position in next year's polls. Vice presidential aspirant Lito Atienza denies speculations that his running mate, Senator Manny Pacquiao, will back out from their tandem following his meeting with President Rodrigo Duterte. And Bongbong Marcos is off to Batangas today. Manila Mayor Isko Moreno is scheduled to be in Laguna, while Vice President Leni Robredo is visiting Cebu. And those are the top stories at this hour. Join us later at 2 p.m. as we continue to monitor the day's biggest stories. You can also catch One News on the Signal Play app. Just register for a free account at www.signalplay.com so you can stream One News live anytime and anywhere. I'm Charles Lejano. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines. We are One News.